Welcome back to another episode of Checking from Behind. And Game 7 of the Finals is here. It was improbable. They were down. The Oilers were down 3-0. They win Game 4. It's like, okay, could be a gentleman's sweep. They win Game 5. It's like, okay, Florida can't. They're not going to collapse, right? But here, Monday night, when you guys are listening and watching this, it's going to be tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. You called it. Edmonton was going to come back in 7 games. I was like, if the Edmonton wins Game 5, it's going to a Game 7. And the way that the Oilers have dominated the Panthers, I didn't think in a million years there has not been a team all season that has dominated the Panthers like the Oilers have. Panthers,
No.
including playoffs, has not lost 3 straight games. And Edmonton, after losing 3 straight games, including the regular season and the playoffs, currently undefeated, 0 losses, 5+ game winning streaks each way. So right now, the Oilers have all the momentum. Don't know what's happening with the Panthers. The Panthers are playing pathetic. The Oilers are being this team that I honestly didn't think they had it in them. I've been proven wrong. The Panthers, what the fuck is happening to you guys?
So, I think it comes down to a little bit of coaching, a little bit of everything. I think the biggest right now shift in the series has been goaltending. I don't think Stuart Skinner was bad at all in the first 3 games of the final. I thought he was good enough for the Oilers to win. The problem is the Oilers couldn't score. Sergei Bobrovsky, was playing out of his mind, and they finally, figured out how to break through towards the end of Game 3. But by then, it was a little too late. They ended up losing that game still. But, in Game 4, they scored 8 goals. Game five, where they scored 5 goals or 6 goals.
Game 5, they scored
4. It was either 4 or 5, I think.
I'll
Actually,
double check that with you, but yeah.
and then and then in Game 6, they scored 5 goals. I know 2 of them are empty net goals, but for the most part, the Oilers have been dominating them. I said this last week after they had that big Game 4 win. Is I think they figured out how to play against the Panthers. Chris Knobloch he's what he's doing right now with this Oilers team is absurd. When he took over the team, they were a complete mess. Disaster, dumpster fire. They just lost to the Sharks. Everyone was making fun of them. Oh, there's no way they're going to make the playoffs. And they go on that crazy winning streak, and they make the playoffs. And they have an historically great penalty kill in the Stanley Cup Final. I think it's almost at 95%, which is absurd.
Wild.
And, the power play, I know it's kind of down in the Stanley Cup Final, but for the first 3 rounds, they were also at a historic pace. And their special teams that kind of carried them to that conference final, to the Stanley Cup Final. Games 1 through 3, they struggled, especially on the power play. They couldn't really break through. Game 4, they finally start to figure it out. And it was a really great quote from Connor McDavid. They asked him if he was worried about the power play. He said, "No, I'm not." He's like, we usually figure it out once, especially in a playoff series. They're gonna throw out everything they got to try to stop our power play. We know how good we are. We're gonna figure it out, and they did figure it out. Since Game 4, their power play has been much better, and their penalty killing is still ridiculous. Two shorthanded goals to start games back to back. For I believe first time ever in a Stanley Cup Final that's ever happened in 2 straight games to open the scoring. Connor Brown has been awesome. Mattias Janmark, that whole bottom 6 has been really stepping up since games 1 through 3. Like McDavid didn't have any points in Game 6, and they still scored 5 goals.
I believe that was the first time in years that McDavid has had 0 points and the Oilers have won. Something like that. It's either entire regular season and playoffs or just playoffs. I would have to fact check that because I saw something somewhere. But Game 4, Oilers scored 8 goals. Games 5 and Game 6, they scored 5 goals. They have outscored the Panthers 18-5 in the last 3 games. Absolutely nuts.
They completely flipped it. They flipped the script.
They have more shorthanded goals, the Oilers do, than the Panthers have power play goals all series, which is absolutely nuts. The Oilers have done a great job. Paul Maurice, one of the best coaches in the league, being out coached by Knobloch, the adjustments that the Oilers have made have been superb. Paul Maurice, he just keeps saying to stick with it, but at what point do you have to be okay, what we're doing is not working? The Oilers have been successful making adjustments. You think that you can stick with the same game and be able to break through. That's not gonna like if you stick with the same game you've been playing the last 3 games, you're gonna have the worst collapse in NHL history and possibly sports history. Top 3 in sports history if you lose Game 7. Like, there's so much pressure on the Panthers right now to win Game 7. Like we've said the entire playoffs, the Oilers, outside of really the first round and maybe the second round when they played Vancouver, you aren't expected to be here. Like the Western Conference Finals, you lose to Dallas. Well, you started off the season shitty, you lost to a better team.
Mm-hmm.
Get past Dallas, down 3-0 against the Panthers. What do you have to lose? You made it to the finals, and now it's 3-3. The Panthers were expected to be here after being in the finals last season. Oilers have nothing to lose, especially after winning the last 3 straight games. So if you're Connor McDavid, if you're Noblock, if you're Stuart Skinner, you can just play your game. The Panthers are going to be out tense. They're going to be tight, even though they're playing in Sunrise. If the Oilers go up 1-0 again to start the game, the Panthers are going to sit there and be like, shit. And then they're going to start overthinking. Carter Verhaeghe has been overthinking, especially with the puck recently. He's been absolutely nowhere to be found. And none of the Panthers stars are nowhere to be found except Barkov, who we'll get into it a little bit later. An offsides call that was literally, it looks like millimeters. So the Panthers have to come out and they have to get up at least by 1 goal to start the game. Now, multiple goals, if you go up 2-0 in the first period, you're mint on no fucking shit. That's how you want it to start. But I don't see a world where if the Oilers go up 1-0 that the Panthers can claw back with how the series is going right now.
I mean, we'll see. I expect the Panthers to come out guns blazing in Game 7. Like you said, all the pressure's on them right now. They're the team that's supposed to win the cup. They were up 3-0 in the series. Okay, you lose Game 4, no big deal. It's hard to sweep, especially in the final. A lot of the times the team's going to fight back for at least 1 game, but they proved for the first 3 games that they were the better team. And if they lose Game 5, okay, pressure's a little higher now. Game 6, like, oh shit, are we really going to do this? And Game 7, all the pressure is on the Florida Panthers. I don't necessarily agree with you saying that the Oilers are playing with house money. I think there's a lot of pressure internally in that organization that they need to win a cup now. Connor McDavid, he only has 2 years left on his contract. Like Draisaitl has 1 or McDavid has like 2 or 3, I think, and Draisaitl has 1 or 2 left. So, you want to try. If you're not winning, I feel like it's really hard to find a world where you can try to keep both of them. Winning a cup goes a long way. This is probably the best roster they've had since they drafted McDavid. Depth-wise, they've reached a solid bottom 6. Their defense is okay, but the biggest question mark going into the whole season was goaltending. Jack Campbell was an experiment that completely failed. Stuart Skinner's been super inconsistent all year. He'll have a game where he looks like a rock star, and then have a game where he looks like he belongs in the AHL. And crazy stat too. Throughout these playoffs, in any game 4 through 7, Stuart Skinner has played in this year, he's 10-0. He's not lost any game in crunch time. I thought he was amazing in Game 6. I mean, that 1 goal he let in, that was just a disgusting move by Barkov. I don't think any goalie stopping. If you give that Barkov that much space, he's gonna make you look silly. But the part of the issue with the Oilers, especially through games 1 through 3, was they weren't getting any help from anyone not in their name Connor McDavid. I thought Leon Draisaitl finally had a good game in Game 6 with that ridiculous saucer pass he had to Holloway off the really bad turnover by Carter Verhaeghe, who was hesitating and not knowing what he wanted to do with the puck. And that's what happens when you start losing. You get in your own head. You're not trusting all the things you always did all the time, little things that work. All of a sudden they're not working. He's like, well, fuck, I don't know what to do. And it doesn't seem like Maurice is making adjustments to this. He said multiple times in press conferences after the games, like, I'm not worried. I thought we played a strong game. They just got lucky. Or we're taking too many penalties. If we clean up the penalties, we're good. Because you can only hold that Oilers power play for so long. That power play is ridiculous. It's pretty much like an all-star game lineup out there on that first power play unit. I've said that multiple times, but if Leon Draisaitl, can play like that in Game 7, and Connor McDavid, has been playing like he has been, that's a tough assignment to have. They're not playing on the same line most of the time. When they really need them, they're out there together. But Evan Bouchard is starting. Has been a force out there. Even Darnell Nurse has been better the last couple of games. They've been a lot tighter defensively. When you're getting saves from your goalie, it gives you a little bit more confidence to take more chances to score, and I think that's really benefited the Oilers. But back to Paul Maurice, like he's saying, I don't believe in momentum. Momentum's not a thing. We'll be fine. We're just gonna stick with it. Well, it's not working, dude. You need to make some kind of adjustment because you're getting out coached by a guy who hasn't been even coaching a team for a year.
I have a question for you that's been kind of circulating the internet the past few days since like McDavid has put up back-to-back 4+ point games. Games 4 and 5, excuse me, and nothing in game 6. So let's say the Panthers win game 7, hypothetically, and McDavid
hmm
still he puts up a multi-point game, whatever, 2+ points. Do you still give him the Conn Smythe, or do you feel like you have to give it to a Florida Panther?
See, I don't like most of the time the Conn Smythe winner is going to be on the team that wins
Mm-hmm.
because usually they were a big reason why they win. But there's only two players in NHL history that have only had a better playoff run than Connor McDavid has. Those two players are Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. When you're in a conversation with guys like that, I feel like he has to get it no matter what. He's been historically great, breaking records. Even if you're in the same like he's 5 points away from tying Gretzky's record. I don't think that happens in Game 7, but you never know. It's Connor McDavid. He can go into beast mode whenever he wants to. But I think he deserves it. I mean, I would have to say throughout this final, I mean, I thought Bobrovsky was a lock for the Conn Smythe based on how he played in games 1 through 3. But now he's not in that conversation anymore, in my opinion. I think if I had to give it to one person from Florida, it'd have to be Barkov.
I think Barkov's the runaway choice if you have to give it to Florida. But yeah, I agree. Connor McDavid deserves it. 42 points in 24 games, I believe it is.
Absurd.
Absurd, absolutely absurd. Now, probably not going to get 6 points to completely break the record, but
No.
first
That'd
off,
be crazy
that
if he
would
did.
be insane. If he gets 6 points, break the record, the Oilers are winning like 9-2 or something like that. Crazy. And then any Game 7 predictions here, real quick?
I don't know. I mean, we're saying like everything's favoring Edmonton and everything, but I mean, Florida's still a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
It's one game. You could forget about everything else. It's one game. You play your best hockey for 60 minutes. You're a champion, and if Florida could put everything past it, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to win the game. But I'm going to stick with what I said last week. I believe the Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup. I also predicted this back in like January or
Mm-hmm.
February that the
Yes.
Oilers are going to win the Cup. Give me the Oilers 4-2.
Okay. I like the Oilers pick. I can definitely see them winning it. However, though, I think Paul Maurice is going to go into that locker room pregame and is going to tell the boys, he's going to be like, listen, 60 minutes left. Remember how you felt last season? Tears on your face, absolute agony, disgusting. Matthew Tkachuk said they'd be back winning the entire thing. They're back here. Game 7 blew a 3-0 lead. Can't let them win this game. The Panthers are going to win Game 7. They're going to avoid completely collapsing. They're gonna win it. I think it'll be tighter. I think you know what? I'm gonna go. It's gonna be 3. No, it's gonna be 5-3. Actually, it's gonna be tighter, but it's gonna be a little bit more of a high scoring. Panthers win the cup. So did
Okay. I
did
mean,
did
go
you?
ahead.
What's that?
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, did you want to talk about the horrid offsides call, or do you want to move on straight to
Oh yeah,
the?
we could bring that up real quick. Yeah. So I was watching the game. The Oilers just scored to go up 2-0, and all of a sudden the Panthers score right away. I was like, oh shit, we got a game now. And then I heard that Knobloch's challenging, and I was like, whoa, like normally you don't challenge an offsides unless you're like, no, 100% it's
Mm-hmm.
offsides. And they showed the replay, and I was like, this is so close. I thought it was too close to call. Like you had to like zoom in like 20 times. You had to get like, I guess they didn't see the offsides until literally the last shot they saw, and it was like barely on the blue line. And credit to Knobloch's coaching staff. A lot of trust in that video coach to, because you know what? If you lose that challenge, not only does Florida score, they get a power play. And all of a sudden they have a golden chance to tie the game, which, like, that's a big swing. It takes big balls to do something like that. I mean, I thought, I respect that they called it offsides. You got to call it like it is, but man, I hate the offside challenge unless it's something obvious. I hate crap like that because no referee's gonna be able to see that. No
I
referee.
I agree too with some of that, and Now the people that are saying, "Oh well, if it's off by millimeters, like you shouldn't call it offside," so it's still technically offside, but
Yeah, it's still offsides. They
right,
called it by the rules.
right, they're calling it by the rules. There's nothing they can do, and the fact that they found it on their last shot is just tells you how close it was. And in momentum is a huge thing. If the
Hmm.
Panther, if that call stands or it's just plain out not challenged at all, 2-1, Panthers get a goal. They're like, okay, we can beat this defense. We can beat this goaltending. Our captain scored the goal. Like, let's get behind him and let's get some pressure going. Cole gets called back first off. Paul Maurice absolutely livid. He's like, how the fuck is that offsides? So it switches from Panthers are back in this game. It's 2-1, one goal game to 2-0. You don't know, like, you're like, how the fuck do we score at this point? It's like, we can't catch a break. So now you're hanging your heads and you're down on yourself. So I think that was a huge call in the game. Potential series all-terrain call. We'll never know because, again,
Oh
momentum's a
yeah,
thing.
I mean, if Edmonton challenges that and they lose, like the Panthers get a power play, you don't know what's going to happen
Hmm.
after that. You have all the. I feel like that swung the momentum back to them. You know, the goal doesn't count, and Edmonton ends up scoring another goal late in the period to go 3-0 in the third, and that pretty much was closed it out for that game, in my opinion. But t- but you can't rely on that for the Panthers. You're making too many stupid mistakes. You're giving up a ton of odd man rushes. You know, Bobrovsky was great at stopping those first three games. But eventually, like, you can't keep giving them odd man rushes, and the Oilers have been exploiting the neutral zone like a ton. The Panthers play really tight; they get really hemmed in their zone. They look off. Like there's just something not right going on with them right now. That's why I picked the Oilers to win Game 7.
So we have a ton of news to talk about. We're going to dive right into it. And the biggest news of the week, Jacob Markstrom gets traded to the New Jersey Devils after a trade fell through closer to this past season's deadline. Finally get a deal done. The Flames end up getting a 23-year-old defenseman in Kevin Ball and a 2025 first-round pick. It is top 10 protected. The Flames are also retaining 31.25% of the cap hit, and it knocks the cap hit down to $4 million for the remaining 2 years of this Jacob Markstrom contract. And my initial thoughts was like, this is it for Jacob Markstrom. This is all. But I looked at it from a deeper level and I was like, you know what? I think this is a good trade for both teams. And I know Alexander Holtz was being rumored to be part of the trade when they first had a deal done that fell through at the deadline. And then also this one when talk started to get more serious just these past couple weeks. And I guess the Flames value Kevin Ball more. And I think him getting added to the blue line for the Flames is nice. And also the 25 first round pick. If everything goes right for the Devils, it's probably going to be a later first round pick into the 20s. So I think overall getting a first round pick for Markstrom really isn't that bad. On top of it, the salary retention I think is absolutely huge for the Devils. And the Flames get rid of most of it.
My main question for the Devils is why didn't you do this last year, like during the season when your season was in jeopardy? You had like probably second worst goaltending in the league behind Ottawa. You know, they have a talented team. They were dealing with injuries, but the goaltending was definitely something holding them back. There was rumors that they had a deal done. The last second, New Jersey backed out, pissed Markstrom off. And I guess that part of the reason why I think Markstrom was going to be moved no matter what this offseason, I think he was pissed off at the Flames for, saying, hey, can you waive your no trade clause? And then they don't actually end up trading him. You know, he thinks he's leaving. I can get that, but, I mean, maybe Tom Fitzgerald has a beef with Lindy Ruff or something because I think lack of goaltending last year is what got him fired. Honestly, was they knew there's no way they didn't know going into the season last year that they needed it. They didn't know they needed a goalie. Like, come on, that was like I mean, I can't believe they made it to the second round of the playoffs last year with that way that goaltending was. Schmid came in and played well enough, but then they got kind of spanked in the second round. But I mean, I think this makes them a playoff contender immediately. Take that. I think they take that playoff spot that Washington had easily. If they can stay healthy, especially looking forward to Dougie Hamilton coming back for a full season. He's a big difference maker on that team. I think
Very.
I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is. Luke Hughes is going to take the next step and continue to get better. He had 47 points last year as a rookie. Really good rookie year for a defenseman. Um, I think the sky's the limit for this team. And I finally have an actually good goalie now. And I don't think they gave up a lot to get him.
They really didn't. And talking about the blue line a little bit here before I dive into a little bit of the forward group before we move on, like Simone Nemec, I think is going to take a next step. You get Dougie Hamilton back from injury. It's going to take a ton of pressure off of guys like Luke Hughes and Simone
Oh,
Nemec.
yeah.
Luke Hughes had to be power play number one with Dougie Hamilton being out since November for most of the season. And you add Luke Hughes, who's only going to get better. You have still guys like John Marino, who I think is solid. 4.4 at the age of 27. Contract could be definitely better, but I think Yogi Sagenthaler is great for them as well. So I think their blue line is going to be very well-rounded. And on top of that, with their forward group, you get Jack Hughes. Hopefully a healthy season from this forward group, especially because outside of Dougie Hamilton, the blue line was relatively healthy. Jonas Sagenthaler's out for a few with an injury as well. But the forward group suffered mightily. Jack Hughes out for 20-plus games total in the season. You had, I think, Eric Harlow was injured for a couple games. Who else? Nico Hischier missed some time. So some of your top guys missed some valuable time for the Devils, which it could be a little bit of everything. Obviously, goaltending was one of the issues on the why this team, well, actually the main issue on the why this team wasn't that great. But if you keep guys like Jack Hughes, Timo Meier, Jesper Bratt, I think worth the $7.875 million beautiful contract. You still have guys like Alexander Holtz, who I think is going to get a little bit of a bigger role, especially with Sheldon Keefe. And I think Sheldon Keefe is a good coach for this team. He already dealt with Toronto, and I think right now the Devils are in a much better spot with Toronto. He's given a much better goaltending tandem that he can work with. And granted, with Toronto, you had four guys that your core four that were locked in for $40+ million in cap space. You have a bunch of contracts here that Tom Fitzgerald has actually stolen. Jack Hughes at 8. Steele, Jesper Bratt, I already talked about Steele. Nico Hischier, 7.25, great contract. Timo Meier started to get going at the end of last season after Timo Meier, after Lindy Ruff got fired. He's at 8.8. I want to see a full season under Sheldon Keefe, what he can do. I still think the 8.8 might be a little bit of an overpay, but at the time that the contract is signed, he was worth the 8.8, just had a down season. So, and I think their depth's great. Dawson Mercer and Nolan Foots and RFA. Dawson Mercer, a great middle six guy, closer to the bottom six for him. But I think he has a ton of upside. Only 22 years old. He's going to get a bigger role. So this team is young. This team has a ton of upside. And if Jacob Markstrom, by the way, I'm pretty sure saves above expected. He was like top 10 in the NHL last season with like 40, something crazy like that.
Well, he had a decent year last year. Yeah.
He was. His projected WAR percentage was
pretty
at 90.
bad. On a pretty bad Calgary team, in my opinion.
So I think Jacob Markstrom is going to help this team out a ton.
Well, don't forget they also have Jake Allen as their backup
Yes.
now. He's one of the best backups in the league. So you go from a situation where you had probably one of the worst goaltending situations in the league to one of the better ones. I mean, you got two veteran players now, though. So, Markstrom 34, Allen 33, so a little bit older. You still got to find that next young goalie, but that gives you a couple of years at least to figure it out, and they could possibly extend Markstrom. I know he's under contract for another year after this upcoming season. He'll be, when's his birthday? So he'll be 35. I think you probably give him another year or two contract if you like how he's playing. Goalies can usually play a little bit until they're a little older, around 37. So it wouldn't surprise me if he stuck around. But yeah, I mean, if the Devils can stay healthy, I think they're definitely a playoff team, no matter what.
Philip Hronek ended up re-signing with the Vancouver Canucks for an 8-year, $7.25 million a year contract with the Vancouver Canucks. I know we've talked about it a little bit about him wanting $8 million. He gets just a tad under 8 at 7.25. And I know me, you, and Chris talked a little bit about it privately. I thought the 7.25 is a good deal for both parties. I know I stated $8 million was too high for him when we talked a little bit about it. Between 6 to 7, I thought was a good range. What are your initial thoughts here on it?
I mean, if he can keep up the production he had from this year, turn into a 50, 60 point player, I think that's definitely worth it. He had a great year. He's cashing in on a great year. Um, I think that kind of handcuffs Vancouver a little bit in free agency for what they wanted to do. I know they're really looking to bring in a top six, maybe like top line forward, Jake Gensel, Sam Reinhart, someone like that. But I think if he continues to perform that way, well like this, I think it's a fine contract, especially with the cap going to be going up. Don't be surprised. I think in this free agency, if you guys get paid a little bit more than you're used to seeing, because the cap's going up by a lot. It's projected to keep going up by a lot for the next few years. All of a sudden, like a good value, like it's like $3 to $4 million, might end up turning into like $5 or $6 million for a good value contract. So, I'm fine with the contract, but I think that has pretty much wrote off them re-signing Nikita Zadorov. I don't see them bringing him back now that they gave Hronek that money.
With the Canucks, you have Elias Lindholm, Zadorov, and Dakota Johnson are their three key names that you have to bring back. Like you said, Zadorov's probably not coming back with Hronek. Elias Lindholm wants 8x8. The Vancouver Canucks don't want to pay him that, and I don't
Nah,
blame.
I don't think no one's gonna pay him
No,
that.
no, he's gonna stay a free agent until August, September if he's gonna keep asking for that. I think to go to Joshua right now, I would get him under contract, and then from there, look at your options, because again, if you sit home with Lindholm, and let's say for example they're negotiating back and forth, and Lindholm and his party and agents being like, 8x8, we're not going any lower at all. We're not going any lower on term or money. Then it's like, okay,
Yeah, then all
well,
the no, yeah, no, he's definitely not getting that contract with the Canucks. I mean, he was awesome for them in the playoffs, but yeah, I can't see him getting an 8x8. That's a lot of money that's like a top line forward money.
yes.
He's more like a second line player now. So I'd be okay with like $6 to $7 million, but eight's too much.
Yes, it is too much. Who knows? Maybe a team will be like, screw it, we'll give you 8x8, and
And
whichever team.
also the other player you mentioned, Dakota Joshua, I think
Mhm.
he's gone. Some team's gonna overpay him.
Yeah, especially with what he did for the playoffs, for the Canucks in the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Yeah, he's a solid like bottom six player, middle six guy, and he's probably going to get paid way more than the Canucks are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm. PLD ends up getting traded 1-for-1 with Darcy Kuemper. Darcy Kuemper from Washington goes to LA. PLD goes to Washington. What the fuck is this trade? First off, this came out of left field. I don't even know what to say about it. Like, my reaction is just like, why? From both sides, just why?
I mean, technically, Rob Blake, the GM for the Kings, didn't lie. He didn't say they were going to buy him out. He did. He said we're not buying him out. They didn't buy him out. He
That's
didn't
true.
rule out a trade though. I guess everyone just thought the contract was untradeable.
Oh my god, dude. Well, Rob Blake has turned. Hold on, I'm gonna look this up on Twitter, because what he turned
Oh, it was a
everything
horrible,
into.
horrible trade. Horrible trade.
Hold on. I wonder if I can find. I wonder if I bookmarked it. Da, 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 da. I really hope I bookmarked it. Oh, I don't think I did.
I mean, I could pull up the trade details real quick.
Yeah. Well, basically, he turned guys like I follow Velarde, PLD, first round picks, second round picks, all into just Darcy Kuemper.
Yeah,
So,
not great in hindsight.
I don't want to.
I think it was a move they had to make though.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously it didn't work. If it works, you got PLD for an 8-year contract. Could end up being a really good thing, but you have Quentin Byfield up and coming. Well, I think the idea there was, Anze Kopitar is, getting old. He's getting towards the back end of his
Mm-hmm.
career. He's still a good player, but he's 36 years old. Will be 35 going into 37 going into the upcoming season. So you probably only got a couple more. I mean, he had 70 points this year. He's still great.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame player, in my opinion. Um, you have really good second, third line center with Philip Deneau. You took a team that was like, okay, they might have the deepest center room in the league to, and we have good veteran leadership. If PLE gets off track, we have guys like Drew Doughty and Kopitar to kind of steer him back. And when I saw Doughty calling him out, like he didn't say his name, but when I saw him calling him out, I was like, oh,
It's over.
this thing, they got to get rid of him. Like, I mean, I don't get what his issue is. He's a great player. When he got drafted by Columbus, he had a great few years in Columbus. Uh, he's still the second best season he ever had was the second year in the NHL with the Blue Jackets. He had 61 points. You know, he gets traded. He says, "I want to play Columbus anymore." He literally quits in the middle of a game. It's like his controller disconnected or something. Didn't even. Didn't even. It was pathetic.
Yeah.
He gets traded to Winnipeg. Has a couple good years in Winnipeg. Jets get a haul for him because he says, "I don't want to sign with the Jets. I don't want to sign a long-term deal." It's like, okay, bye-bye. And so they get a haul from the Kings. I mean, what a fleece that's looking for now for the Jets. You get 3 good players and a draft pick for him, and the Kings end up with Darcy Kuemper, which they needed a goalie pretty bad. Because goaltending was definitely a big issue for them last year. And because you look at the goaltending market, there's not a lot available, really. I mean, not any really good ones. Nedeljkovic just signed an extension with Pittsburgh, which I thought he was going to be one of the more attractive, maybe fringe starter backup goalies available in the market. Now that kind of shifts the conversation to Linus Ullmark, where he's going to go. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Yeah, I'm down to talk about it.
Yeah, so I've heard from a couple of different sources that talks have really intensified over Ullmark. I heard Ottawa is a team that's very interested in him, which makes a lot of sense. Detroit as well. Um, I think Boston, if they do this trade right, I think they can, kind of recoup their farm, get a couple solid draft picks, and get some scoring depth that they needed to kind of, rejuvenate their roster. And I think they were one of the slower teams in the league. Definitely benefit from having elite goaltending, Swayman and Ullmark. Um, I mean, I feel like right now Boston, everything's in Boston's favor to kind of fleece somebody for Ullmark. I think Ullmark's a great goalie. I think he greatly benefits from playing in the Boston Bruins system. He won a Vezina, but Jeremy Swayman is also an outstanding goalie. George Swayman's younger, so obviously they're going to keep him, especially with what he just did in the playoffs. With that cap hit, Swayman's about to get paid. He's going to get traded, but with Ottawa specifically, I mean, that's the team that makes the most sense to try to get him. I don't know how they make it work.
There has to be something like, obviously Korpisalo is still worst contract, we're at least worst goalie contract in the league. There's been multiple rumors that have circulated around Ottawa with multiple defensemen being on the block. And with Boston and Ottawa, if they make this Hallmark trade work, I'd assume there has to be something like retention wise with Korpisalo. I think Korpisalo would have to go back with some type of retention. 2, I think Jacob Chikrin would have to go back. Plus probably some prospects or draft picks or a mixture of both. If you add in a draft pick, I'm sure the prospect won't be as high. But if you're like, third, mid-round pick and lower with the draft pick, I think the prospect's going to have to be a decent prospect that like you said, the Bruins have a glorious opportunity to not only rebuild their depth, rebuild their prospect pool, at least start the foundation of both, and fleece somebody in a trade like this. Markstrom was the 3rd best goalie on the trade market right now. The free agency market is absolutely horrible with goalies. And there's not really any other goalies right now that are on the trade market outside of Ullmark that you look at and be like, you know what? We can get this goalie instead of Ullmark because it's going to cost less. There's not going to be another goalie on the market like that. Like, let's be real. The Bruins can be like, listen, go to a team like Ottawa, for example, and be like, all right, so you guys need a goalie. We'll take Korpisalo off your hands, retain some money. We'll take Chikrin off your hands, and also give us something else for those contracts and for those players. Like, that could be a thing that Boston can do. I don't know exactly what the deal would be, but that's my starting point if I was Boston. I don't know what the ballpark is with Boston, Ottawa, or any other team in general. I'm sure, like you said, Yzerman has definitely called Boston to inquire on him. I'm sure other teams had as well. So I'm intrigued to see what Ullmark's price is going to be, and it's going to happen sooner or later because Boston, A, is going to have to pay Swayman, and B, they're going to have to get rid of Ullmark's contract before they do that. And at some point, if they for some reason don't like a trade offer, Ullmark's just gonna plain out walk. They're not gonna re-sign Ullmark.
Well, he's not. He still has another year left on his
Yeah, 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 yeah,
contract,
yeah, yeah.
so like he won't walk. I mean, obviously, I think he gets traded no matter
Mm-hmm.
what. It wouldn't shock me if it happens before the draft. The Bruins probably want draft compensation in this year's draft for him. It wouldn't shock me if they ended up getting if they do end up doing a trade with Ottawa if they get their first round pick back from the Senators,
Mm-hmm.
which they acquired from Detroit in the Alex DeBrincat trade. Uh, but if I'm Boston, I want a forward for Allmark. I think their defensive core is pretty set. You got Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Brandon Carlo, Andrew Peak, Mason Lorhei, really good young player. That's a pretty solid top five defensive core right there. I think what hurt them a lot was their forward depth. They have David Pastrnak. He's a beast. Um, their center depth is still not great. I think they kind of overcame it last year with how good they are defensively. This is a team that desperately needs to get younger on forward side. Brad Marchand in the back half of his career, 36, still a good player. Charlie McAvoy's 32. Your number one centers are either Charlie McAvoy or Pavel Zacha. Um, I mean, they're good centermen, but I don't think they're a first line center, either one of them. They really need to rebuild that forward core, and I don't know. I mean, Ottawa has a lot of players that could potentially be available.
Mm-hmm.
Call me crazy. What if they make this huge trade and it's with Brady Tkachuk?
I think Ottawa fans would burn the city down.
I mean,
I
Ottawa really, really needs a goalie.
mm-hmm.
Really. I mean, because I'm looking at their forward core. Maybe a guy like Shane Pinto comes over in a trade back to
Yes,
Boston.
yes,
You
yes.
know, he's a good younger player still. Maybe Matthew Joseph. He's another decent player that I think could go over. I mean, obviously the guys that probably aren't going to be moved are Tim Stutzla and Brady Tkachuk and
Mm-hmm.
probably Jake Batherson. I think that could be an attractive player for the Bruins as well, Batherson.
Ooh,
But
I like Batherson.
I can't see Ottawa wanting to move on from him. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the easy target for anyone on the Senators right now is Chikrin. You know, it's been kind of obvious that the Senators want to move on from him, but it's gonna be
Well,
tough.
I be real quick. So you mentioned the five defensemen from Boston. How about real quick? You have Shane Pinto part of the trade. You have Jacob Churkin part of the trade.
I don't think they'll both be in the trade.
You
I think
don't
it
think
might be
they'll?
one of
You
the.
don't think Ottawa will get rid of both of them for a guy
I
like
think if
Omar?
Boston wants a first round pick, they're not going to get Pinto and Chikrin.
Yeah, if Boston wants the first round pick, then I wouldn't add in Pinto and Chikrin. But yeah, you're completely right with that. Um, Now with Philadelphia is interested in the 11th overall pick and the Sabres' 11th overall pick, and they're also trying to end up with 2 draft picks inside the top 12, as well as Farabee has made available in hockey trade talks, is what the Flyers insider specifically called it. I don't exactly know what he's referring to with that, but the
I mean,
Fly.
I think he means like a hockey trade, like one for one. Like you give us a
Okay,
player, we give you a player. That's like a hockey trade.
okay. Well, we'll get into the Sabres a little bit with the 11th overall pick, but first, the Flyers. They are going to be busy during the offseason. I'm assuming they're going to have a deal in place for something during the draft if they trade for the 11th overall pick. Off the top of my head, I don't know what good value would be because the 11th overall pick is something where it's wishy-washy, like it's right outside the top 10. But at the same time, though, I think anything inside the top 13 in this draft, you'd be getting a really good prospect at that.
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers also have some draft capital to work with. They got 2 second round picks this year, 2 second round picks next year. They have 2 firsts this year and 2 firsts next year. So they could potentially mortgage a future pick if they want to move up into that top 10.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think it necessarily has to be at 11 with the
Yeah.
Sabres. I know that's kind of been one that's a pick that people like. It's open. Like the Sabres have
Mm-hmm.
like expressed that they're interested in trading that pick away. So that's an easy talking point. But I mean, the Panthers, their other first round pick this year is the Panthers, so it's either going to be the 31st or 32nd overall pick. I don't know. You have to give up a little bit more than that if you want to package that in to move up into the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a very late pick. It's pretty much a second round pick at this point.
Yeah.
I don't get why they want to trade Joel Farabee. That one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think he's a good young player. 50 points last year in 82 games, 22 goals. He's under contract for 4 more years, including this season at $5 million. He's only 24. I mean, that's a player I don't get why they would want to move on from him already.
I agree. I think one guy that I would want to move on before Farabee, I know he's been on the Flyers forever now, Travis Konechny. I would look at him first before Farabee and trying to trade, but I get why they might not want to trade Travis. You would have to have the right deal to trade for a guy like Travis. I mean, he's 5.5 is a UFA after the 24-25 season, so this upcoming season. He's only 27 too, but you have Farabee who's making $5 million for the next 4 seasons. He's not a UFA until the 2028-29 season, so you have some term with that. With only a guy who's, like I said, 24 years old, so you can keep a guy like Farabee, get rid of Travis Konechny, trade him for something, because I think Travis Konechny would have a lot more value than a guy like Farabee too. You get rid of that 5, and that would open up. You would have what, $5.8 million in cap space. Right now they're only at $800,000 in cap space. Well, $803,000. So I
Hmm.
would be looking at a guy like Travis Konechny first. Obviously, there's guys like Cam Atkinson. You're not getting rid of him. Sean Couturier. You're not gonna get rid of him. That's untradeable in my opinion. 7.75 for Sean Couturier at the age of 31 for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons. You're not getting rid of that contract. So I think right now there's not a ton of assets you can trade, but one of them I think is Travis Konechny. And I know some Flyers fans have a very, very high attachment to Konechny. They wouldn't like a Travis Konechny trade, which makes sense. But at the end of the day, it is a business. You have to do stuff to make your team overall better. And you can use Travis Konechny as leverage to get inside the top 10 if you really wanted to, if you're Briere, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, another talking point we can move into with the Flyers is this is recent news that came out today is Matevy Michkov is most likely coming over to the NHL next year, a couple years earlier than expected, and that might change some things for the Flyers because we got this really great young player coming in. We need to fight. They probably want to play in the top 6. I mean, who knows how tough John Tortorella is going to be on him? Uh, we'll see, but I mean, I think in a trade though, like Konechny would be much more valuable, I think, than Farabee. Even though Farabee has that term, uh, Konechny's a proven player. Like he's a proven 50, 60 point player in this league, and I think he's a gritty player. He's not afraid to get into the dirty areas. I think that he'd be highly coveted in a trade.
Much highly coveted. And with Michkov, I want to touch on him real quick. The fact that originally, like you said, he wasn't expected to be in the NHL for another couple seasons. He's coming over to the Flyers, and I think that's huge for them too because that alleviates some pressure off of the Flyers. In a way, it's like, okay, we have this Russian stud who is a top 2 talent in the 2023 NHL draft, right behind Bedard. You just get his skill set, put him up in the top 6, put him on the power play, and then if you get stuff back for Travis Konechny, let's say a not the first overall pick, a first round pick inside the top 10, plus you get something else back for him, like you honestly could. Like, is Travis Konechny worth a top 10 pick? That's
Not
iffy.
one for
Would
one.
you not one for one?
Not
Would you, if you're the Flyers and you want to get rid of Travis Konechny and get into the top 10? You have to give up more if you're the Flyers, correct? Or would you want more back?
Yeah, I think if you wanted to move into the top 10, you were making Konechny available. It'd have to be more than just him.
Okay.
It'd probably have to be like another prospect or another draft pick at least.
I think they can make that work.
I think Konechny gets you a lot of the way there. Um, but they have to throw in a little bit more.
And speaking of the 11th overall pick, the Buffalo Sabres, I already mentioned, they are interested in moving it. However, though, the Sabres are going, still, by the way, still 13-year playoff draw, absolutely nuts. There are rumors and potential stuff circulating around the Sabres that they might buy out Skinner, free up some cap space for this season and next season, but 2026, the cap hit jumps up to like $6 million or something and then jumps right back down, which is absolutely wild if you ask me. The Sabres have some work to do with this roster. If you're the Sabres, and I think this is what's going to happen with the 11th overall pick, I know Adams has stated like he's open to trading it to anybody. However, though, I don't think, like, I know Chris in our group chat ended up saying that he thinks if a trade happens with the 11th overall pick, it's going to happen before draft day. I didn't respond to that, but I kind of disagree with it, and here's why. So, if the Sabres have some guys on their draft board, I think they're gonna sit there and they're gonna have a deal in place. And if their guy that their guys or guy whatever they want at the 11th overall pick isn't there, they're gonna follow through with that deal and they'll make it the second that the 11th overall pick is on the clock. Now, if they have a guy that's there, I think they're gonna, whichever team they have a deal in place with, they're gonna be like, listen, our guy is here at 11. We're just gonna go ahead with the draft pick and then, move on with the entire draft offseason, whatever. And I think that if I'm Kevin Adams, at least that's what I potentially do. I know the Sabres have so many forward prospects, and you're most likely going to take a forward with that 11th overall pick. But I think like this talent is so good within the top 13 draft picks that if there's a guy like Cole Eiserman there whose draft stock's kind of falling similar to Zach Benson, and if you want to buy out Skinner, you have to replace that in some way, shape, or form. And I think Cole Eiserman's shot is like Cole Caulfield. He has the best shot in the draft. I think that would be a great pick for the Sabres if they do go ahead and keep the 11th.
Yeah, I think it's more likely they keep the pick than trade it. I think the Sabres would love to trade it. I think they have to make the playoffs this year. Kevin Adams is going to get fired. Um, as simple as that. I think Eiserman's a guy that they could potentially pick. I think the logical pick would be take a defenseman, but you never know with the Sabres. I think they have enough forward prospects.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Jeff Skinner though is really interesting to me because obviously the contract's horrible. Everybody knows it's horrible. It was horrible the moment it was signed. 8-year, $9 million a year. Especially his first few years into that contract, he was horrible. He's been good the last couple of years. Kind of simmered down a little bit in the second half of the season last year. But it kind of surprises me that they want to buy out this contract now. They're clearly trying to clear cap space for something. What that is, I do not know. Because the Sabres are a team that they already have a lot of cap space. They have $23 million in cap space, and you buy out Skinner, and this year that frees you up around like $5 or $6 million. So then you have like $30 million in cap space right there. You got to be planning something with all that money.
Especially with all the pressure on Kevin Adams and this organization and get into playoffs, you're going to make a signing to get somebody that can help you get to that in free agency. And what that is, we'll never know, I guess, until it happens. Do you want to go a little bit into free agency about that, or do you think there's not really much to cover with it?
We can do a quick preview.
Okay.
I guess. Let me go pull up the list.
Same.
So I think going into free agency, I think the number one free agent target is probably, in my opinion, going to be Jake Gensel.
Mm-hmm. Easily.
He's 29 years old, had a really good season last year. He's probably going to be looking for a long-term deal. I've heard teams like the Canucks are interested in him. Makes sense there. I'm not sure if the Canucks can afford him, but I think he's the number one target out there in free agency. And then number two, I have Steven Stamkos.
Mm-hmm.
Stammer, he's getting a little bit older. He's 34. Still had 81 points last year at 40 goals. He could still be a super productive player in this league. I'd still be shocked if he ends up leaving Tampa Bay. I think they find a way to make it work. He's expressed that he wants to be a Lightning for life. He wants to retire there. And, he's expressed frustration that, they haven't even talked about a contract yet. And, he clearly wants to stay there. But, at the end of the day, if they don't offer him a contract, he has no choice. He has to walk. And he would be a very highly coveted free agent, in my opinion, for a cup contending team. And number three, I have Sam Reinhart. He's not doing himself any favors right now with how he's playing in the Stanley Cup Final. I think he might be missing out on a few $1 million. I still think he's he's 28. He had 57 goals this year. I think that was a bit of an anomaly. I think he's more around average, like maybe 25 to 35 goals a year. He had a really good year. I also think he finds a way to stay with the Panthers. The Panthers don't have a lot of money to spend, and they have a good amount of free agents, but I think I think Reinhart plays really well with Barkov, at least in the regular season so far. But if he walks to UFA, I could see a team like Chicago or Seattle or Utah being very interested in him. I think Chicago is going to be a team that's going to give someone a big contract, whether that be Sam Reinhart or Jake Gensel. Give Connor Bedard a pure like top line forward to play with. I think would be huge for Bedard.
I
And
think.
then,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
oh no, you're good. Then my fourth free agent I'm just doing my top
Yeah.
five. Jonathan Marchessault, I think, is my fourth target in free agency. There have been rumors that him and Vegas are trying to work something out. I don't see how that ends up happening because Vegas is also in cap hell. They don't have really any cap space. They have, with LTI, they have about $6 million, and I think that's barely enough to even get Marchessault signed. He's going to get over $6 million a year. And right now he's getting 5. He's earned, I know he's 33, but he'll probably get around $6 or $7 million. He's earned that, right? Um, I could see a cup contending team trying to sign him, or maybe like another like Chicago gives him a lot of money to go be help develop that young team. I think he would prefer to stay in Vegas, obviously, but you never know. And then my fifth free agent target is gonna be a little bit off the board. I think he'd be a little later on some people's boards, but not on mine, and that is Tyler Toffoli. I really,
Ooh.
really like him. As a Sabres fan, I really want the Sabres to sign him. The dude is just a great player. He's a super consistent player. Has been for most of his career. He's been kind of all over the world the last few years. Was in LA for a while, then Vancouver, then Montreal, then Calgary, then New Jersey, then Winnipeg. He's probably looking for a long-term deal. Obviously, you don't want to keep moving every couple of years or every few months. But I think he's a really, really great middle six player. Only 32. I could see him getting like a 4 or 5 year contract. I think he would be a really, really great depth piece for a cup contending team.
Yeah, I agree with your top 5 there. And when I cut you off, I was going to mention Jonathan Marchessault because I think he has definitely earned a deal with 42 goals this past season at the age of
Yeah.
33. I think he's going to be great for a team. And like you said, Jake Gensel or Sam Reinhart, I think it's going to go to Chicago. I think Chicago gets one of those two players.
I do too.
And with Jonathan Marchessault, he's a tricky one because if he doesn't go back to Vegas, big if, because obviously cap space is tight. I would see a team like Utah being in on Jonathan Marchessault.
I think they're going to try to make a splash, Utah.
it's going to be somebody. It's going to be one of those top 5 you mentioned. I think Chicago, Utah is going to be number 2, and then after that, like there's some teams that Buffalo will be on somebody. Florida, of course, is going to try to re-sign Reinhart and Montour. You're going to have to make the money work there somehow after the finals. And a lot of these guys, I think Matt Duchene is going to get himself a decent contract with 25 goals for Dallas on a third-line role this past season.
I think Dallas would love to keep him.
I think Dallas is going to try their all to keep a guy like Matt Duchene. You have Sean Monahan, who I think could be kind of a steal, whoever gets him. I'm going to take a look at how he performed this past season.
He had a good year. He had 59 points. Credit to him. He resurrected his career. Like, he had a bunch of injuries in Calgary. He looked dead. Calgary traded away a first-round pick to get rid of him, get rid of his contract. He goes to Montreal as a bit of a bounce back.
26 goals. He had 13 goals in 49 games for Montreal. He had the same amount of goals in 15 less games for Winnipeg.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a really reliable centerman. I almost considered putting him in my top 5, but I decided not to. This is another guy I could see a team like Buffalo trying to sign, a really reliable second, third line centerman who can win faceoffs, which is the thing they really, really needed. I think Monahan will be a highly coveted free agent, though.
1,000%. And of course, we already covered the goalie market. Not going to be great. This is a very forward-heavy free agency class, and we're excited for it next month.
Yeah, not a lot of great defensemen out there in free agency either.
No. That's going to end it for today's episode. All of our socials are down below, as well as the subscribe button on the YouTube page. Hit the notification bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video or go live. If you guys are listening on Spotify and Apple, head over to our YouTube. Check us out there. We appreciate you guys stopping by, and we'll see you guys in next week's episode.